you can never actually know how to pivot, and you're going to get stuck in that position where it's like, I need to raise my prices because it's costing me more money, but clients won't pay me more money. It's like, well, to your point earlier, Tyler, like maybe you don't need to raise your prices. Maybe you just need to do another job.
Honestly, maybe you need to do less.
Yeah. Maybe you're taking on more work and doing more volume, or maybe you're reducing your team and doing less. Welcome back to the Modern Craftsman podcast. Guys, I'm in South Carolina today, and Tyler's
I'm in New Jersey.
not.
My family is in New York.
We're all over the place today. No, I've set up shop. Tyler and I are chatting solo today. We know you guys like these episodes, but we start by going down a Zillow. Can we say Zillow on that? Yeah, we'll say it. And seeing what our first homes, what we sold them for, what they're worth today, but more importantly, how that market is impacting us as builders, as remodelers, as contractors. What does that mean? You know, homes are getting more expensive. You know, in my area, I have clients ask me, how the hell does it cost $1,000 a square foot to build a home? Well, on one hand, I think talking in square foot prices, I'm part of the problem by telling them that. On the other hand, well, as we know, materials are still volatile. You know, labor is more expensive. Building codes are more strict, and there's a huge difference between building a commodity product and building a custom home, and people just still seem to not realize that.
Yeah, but I think it leads to a conversation about how business and life has become so much more expensive, and how are we offsetting that in business? Because I think that we're getting to a point where we just can't continue to raise our prices to remain competitive. So what are you doing to remain competitive but not cut from your bottom line, and how we need to do that, and what we can be implementing to help offset the increased cost of living and being in business.
And guys, before we get into this episode, make sure you head over to moderncraftsman.co, sign up for the newsletter. There's a lot of good stuff coming out. And if you don't know, you will.
Now you know.
This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. We all know how important reputation is in the industry, so it's easy to see why more and more people are turning to Andersen products and services to build their projects and their legacies. Andersen has earned the trust from pros time and time again for over 120 years.
They will work with you to build more efficiently, stay on budget, and earn more referrals by providing high-quality products and support, making your installations easier and confidence stronger. If you've ever visited the ProViews blog on their website, you'll also see how they're working directly with pros to share helpful insight throughout the industry. And big surprise, you can find us on there too, with videos of their manufacturing facilities and testing processes.
Like a 2x4 being blasted at a patio door. You really get the sense of Andersen's commitment to quality by seeing it up close, and they have some incredible resources online. So for more information, head over to andersenwindows.com/moderncraftsman. This podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend. The construction industry is changing fast. Are you keeping up? Tighter margins, labor shortages, and the pressure to work smarter are just a few of the challenges you face every day. Here are a few recent stats to think about. 63% of builders don't have a 3-year business plan, and most builders only spend 15% of their 48-plus hour work week growing their business. And did you know that almost a quarter of builders didn't make a profit in 2024?
This ad is quite appropriate after today's podcast.
It sure is.
The good news, the solutions to these challenges are explored in the 2025 State of Residential Construction Industry Report. Inside, you'll get real insights, data, and strategies to help you thrive. And Buildertrend's giving our listeners a free copy. So head over to buildertrend.com/MC report to download it now.
This podcast is also brought to you by Velux. Have you ever wished you could put just one more window in the living room, or wondered how to add more natural light to a space like a bathroom or maybe a closet? With Velux skylights, you can enhance any space with natural light, making any room feel bigger, brighter, and better.
And natural light is always enhanced by fresh air. Velux skylights open to let in fresh air from above, and built-in rain sensors close at the first sign of bad weather. The best part about skylights, you can add all the features of a window to your client's home without sacrificing privacy. Visit VeluxUSA.com/remodeler to find a Velux product that will add natural light to any space in your build.
And lastly, this podcast is also brought to you by Harnish Workwear. Let's talk about gear that actually holds up on site and doesn't make you look like you've time traveled from a 1990s job site. Harnish Workwear is built by tradespeople for tradespeople. It's what happens when you take old school grit and combine it with modern design and materials that move with you, not against you.
I've personally been wearing their gear for months now, hoodies, pants, and their H-label shirts. And what I love is it's not just durable, it's intentional. Pockets are where they should be, stretch where you need it, and not overheating or freezing your ass off depending on the day. It's the first workwear I've worn that feels like someone actually asks, hey, what do you need out of your gear? And then went and built it right. So if you're tired of boxy fits, blown out knees, and clothes that fight you all day, check out Harnish Workwear. Head to harnishworkwear.com and click Modern Craftsman up top for a deep discount. Quick note here, Nick and I are hosting a free Zoom workshop next Friday, May 9th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to walk through our business vision and scaling plan worksheet. The same one that we shared with everyone on our email list. We'll go through the entire document together, answer your questions, and offer insight as to how we're using it in our own businesses. If you don't have that worksheet yet, make sure to sign up for the newsletter. You can also grab that worksheet and register for the workshop on our Instagram profile at Modern Craftsman Pod. Just click on the story highlights. You can get the worksheet under the free highlight, and you can register for the workshop under the workshops highlight. Again, it's free, but you do have to pre-register through that Zoom link. So hop on, register today. That is next Friday, May 9th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, I haven't been. It's been on Rachel's list. I don't know. I feel like we only go away once or twice a year.
Yeah, we probably go way more than that. Because we came down here in 2021 and Meg came down for a month and I was flying back and forth. But the visual is so clear in my mind. We went to a brewery that you could bring your dog and it was all fenced in and it was dogs and kids and people just hanging out and just everyone was happy. And we were just like, this doesn't exist in Massachusetts. And I'll never forget, we were leaving and this guy pulls in and like, I'm just going to call it a hoopty, like an old, like rusted, like drop top. I'm not even sure, probably a Lincoln or a Cadillac. I don't know what it was. And I'm backing up and he honks at me. And I was like, dude, I didn't even see him. And I put my window down. I'm like, hey, sorry. He goes, it's all good, man. It's all good. I was just letting you know I was there. And I look at Meg and she goes, why is everyone so fucking nice?
Yeah.
It's like, it's so bizarre. And we were driving. So we drove 13 hours home and we came home. That's when we sold our house. And
oh, really? I remember that after COVID that you were like considering opening up something
in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And, So we flew here. This time we flew because we're only here for 2 weeks, and it's like so fast in the air, like the plane. It's so easy to get out of CHS and right into Charleston, and it's just like it's nice. But I mean, every day we have the conversation, and it goes back and forth. It's like, no, like we really have a good school, and like we love New Hampshire, and blah blah blah. And then yesterday, she must have ran to the grocery store or something, and she messaged me. She goes, how about we make a deal? I'm like,
yeah.
What deal are we talking about right now? She's like, if Marley doesn't get into the high school she wants, we'll move. I'm like, that's such a wild thing to say, right? I'm like, I'm not having this. We're not having this conversation right now.
And far away. Yeah. Is the cost of living decent down there? Everything's less than Boston.
It's definitely less than Boston. Yeah, it's definitely less. But it was like it spiked pretty it was like the number one spot that people moved from the either New York or the Northeast or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, we're in a pretty, I mean, it's a nice, we're in Mount Pleasant. It's a nice neighborhood. You know, the homes aren't overly, I mean, like we're in inland, right? And the homes aren't, they're very average, but it's still like you're still 800 to $1,000,000 for like a typical like
Yeah.
two maybe 3 bedroom ranch. So,
It's
but
insane. I was just talking to my older brother. So after college, he had owned a place in West Philly that he made a little bit of money on. He bought a house in like a suburb to Philadelphia, and then he took out a 15-year mortgage. So he's 5 years older, 4 years older than me. And he just paid off his mortgage. And I was like, his wife was like, "Oh, now we have a bunch more money to spend." And I like, he bought his house 15 years ago. So, and like, it's not a crazy house or anything. It's just like an
sure.
average suburban development type of house from the 80s. And I was like, how much more money can you have at this point? You have 2 kids. Like, it's so expensive to live. He's like, we still have taxes and all that. And taxes are high near us. So he's like, maybe we'll save an extra like $1,500 a month. I was like, if you told somebody who is 20 to 30 years old right now that you took a consolidated 15-year mortgage and paid off a house in 15 years and your like principal and interest was only $1,500 a month, they would probably want to kill you. Because that's just insane and unheard of today.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't pay that much for our house when we bought it 8 or so years ago. I think that we overpaid when we bought it, but still, like, the fact that we couldn't get into a newer house without paying substantially more. And I feel like we also consolidated our mortgage some, so we took a shorter term. And taxes are pretty expensive, and like our payment is relatively high. We have a good interest rate, but it's just like expensive. And to think that we couldn't upgrade without spending more is somewhat insane.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's funny you mentioned your first house. I looked at I like Zillowed my first house the other day, and they sold it in November, and they sold it for 200,000 more, and I
Really?
paid like I bought it for like one. I think I bought it for 175, and I sold it for 250. And I mean, I put probably 15,000 into it or something like that, which then it was a 20 by 30 cape. The 30 grand or the 15, I don't remember what number I just said, but it was probably 15 or $20,000 renovation I put into it.
Yeah.
But that went pretty far, and I was like, oh man, they sold it for just over 450. I wonder what they did to it. Nothing.
Yeah, dude.
Like, I was like, oh, they just planted the lawn that I never got around to doing. I'm like, Meg's like, of course, that was 10 years ago. I was like, that was 10 years ago?
Yeah.
And it's crazy. So then I went down a rabbit hole. I was like looking up all my friends' homes and my childhood home. And it's just, I mean, crazy.
We bought our house in our first house. Let's see. I guess it was 2010. And we bought it for
15 years ago.
Yeah, we bought it for 176.5. It was 1,000 square feet, bungalow, 1 bathroom, single floor living, and I put $60,000 into it, like of actual like hard equity material, not any labor. Like I spent $60,000, and when we went to sell it, it was 2000 and let me see. I'm looking it up right now. I think it was like 2018 or so, 2017. And we like had to sell pretty quickly because Rachel was pregnant with our second, and we needed a bigger house. So actually, we never listed it. It sold, and when we went to sell it, it was, I think we sold it for 238. So I like basically, I don't even think I broke even. I probably lost money on it, but
definitely with labor.
Yeah, I mean, but just as far as finances go, like I spent more on it than we got back. So our realtor was like, it was never on the market. Somebody bought it. They wanted to buy it and was like, hey, heard you're interested in selling your house. They bought it. And our realtor was like, she wanted us to list it for 220. And I was like, I have way more into it than that. And this guy offered us like 240 or something, 238. And I was like, I talked to our realtor and she's like, I would sell it for that. Like, I don't think it'll appraise for that much. And I was like, okay, whatever. So we figured she knew what she was talking about. We sold it for 238. And then literally a year later, the dude resold it for 299 without doing anything. And it was 2019. So it was still before COVID.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, at that point, we had 2 kids. I was 30. So I could definitely use an extra $70,000 or
Totally.
$60,000. I was so pissed. I texted my realtor and she's like, how you doing? I was like, a lot better if I didn't think that we left 70 grand on the table when we just sold our house. And she never responded. But then
Of course you didn't.
Dude, it sold again in 2019 for 310.
Yeah.
And then it's listed at 467.5 right now. It's 1,140 square feet.
Yeah.
468, 1,140 square feet on a quarter acre lot.
Yeah, dude. It's the same as mine. I think I'm gonna pull mine back up. So this is so funny. So it recently, I'll give you the numbers too that you just gave me. So I bought it in 2011 for 175, sold it for 249 in 2014. Man, I had that thing for 3 years. That's crazy. And then in 2024, it sold for it was listed for 425 and it sold for 455.
It's insane.
So someone sold it for 30,000 over. I bought it for 30,000 over asking. It's 768 square feet. One bed.
Could you imagine?
One bed, 2 bath. Hold on. What does that work out to?
Square footage wise? Dude,
it's 592 a square foot. That's like, I bought it for 228 a square foot. But I'm wondering where is there that usually said, oh yeah. Yeah. 0.4 acre lot.
Yeah, ours was 50 by 125. Yeah, this is like $300. No, that was 300. Yeah, this is about 400.
Estimated payment $2,900.
Yeah, this is almost $500 a square foot.
Yeah.
It's fun. I have like emails from realtors come in. I'm always looking at real estate. Not that I ever buy any, but I'm always looking. And I just saw I have friends who have been looking for houses who are younger than me. And I'm like, oh, this one's 360. That's not bad. Like for our area, that's something affordable. And I look at it and it's 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 500 square feet. And I was like, this square footage cost on this is insane. It is like a total turd.
Dude, let's relate that to, building. I think that this is like a huge issue that we continue to fight, like as building and remodeling contractors. Everyone's like, why does a house actually cost $1,000 a square foot? It's like, why? Like it comes up constantly. It's like, I want to, we talk to clients. They're like, oh, our budget's $500 a square foot. It's like, you're not building a custom home. Like it's just not I'm talking specifically Boston, but like, that's not obtainable. And someone that tells you that they can build you a custom home for $500 a square foot is not giving you the product that you actually want.
The thing that's also crazy to me is that, like, if you look at $500 a square foot, obviously this includes the land, but it's this house that our first house was built in 1920, so it's 115 years old. It's small. You can expand from a zoning perspective. It was like, okay, but it's not a super nice house and it's not a super nice neighborhood. And to think like you're going to have to invest $500 a square foot for this house, and then you expect to be able to build something for that same price is somewhat insane to me as well, where it's like the most expensive option that you have is to build a house.
Yeah.
Like when you look at, should we build and renovate? Should we buy land? Like the most expensive option is to build,
Right.
custom and new, and the fact that like, hey, you can't buy a dump for $500 a square foot or less. Like, how are people going to build for less than that?
Yeah. It's I make so many references, especially recently. I've been talking a lot about the auto industry and specifically, the ultra premium vehicles, the hypercars and things like that. But it's the same thing with homes in general. Is that there's a difference between a Ferrari and a Toyota Corolla. Like they both do the same thing, but one is built to a completely different spec. And I think that people when they talk about homes, they don't think about it the same way. It's like you're buying a Toyota Corolla. It's like, but you're asking for, a Ferrari, or even worse, like you're asking to build a custom car from scratch.
Yeah.
Like building a car, like if anyone's ever built a custom car, unless you're doing it yourself and you're wrenching on that thing yourself, it you're talking multiple six figures to build a custom car ground up.
I mean,
Like you,
I would be curious from like a man hour perspective, like the comparison between building a house and a custom car, because I would say that like there'd be more man hours into building a house just on the amount of hands that it takes to
for
do that
sure.
work.
Oh yeah, well, I think that also has to do with scale.
Yeah.
You can pack in 50 bodies to a vehicle. I mean, to a house. You can't do that on a vehicle.
Yeah.
Well, you
Clown
can, but
car. Clown car.
clown car, yeah, you can. But like, I think
Not at the same time.
what happens with the auto industry, and I think this is again like going back to something I preach a lot of, like offsite construction and manufacturing. But you think about when you're building a custom car, it's it's usually a collection of parts, and usually that custom shop will have maybe sheet metal fabrication and or machine shop, and they're manufacturing parts, but they're also buying a lot of parts. And sometimes they come in and they're modifying them, but they're sourcing kind of like, let's source the best of the best. And then you flip that to again, Toyota Corolla, like their entire thing is sourcing the most economical parts and then doing it at scale and through an assembly line. And I think that when you look at a neighborhood that is built kind of on, whether it's on spec or they're building track homes, all of that has been centered around like, how do you build the most efficient way possible. And I mean, obviously the unfortunate part, like when you hear the word track home, is there's all these litigations around some of these massive home companies in the US that these homes are building to such subpar quality, which sucks. And I don't know. I can't sit here and say the reason is because, but I can't help but to think that, homes are the standard for homes are continuing to rise, which they should, but they're trying to keep the cost the same.
Well, that's what I was just actually thinking as you were saying that. I almost feel as though many of us are being forced to scale in order to remain competitive. And what I mean by that is, when I think of a custom home builder, or even just like a new home builder, well, it could be anyone. Mm-hmm. When the cost of living goes up, not only for our clients but for ourselves, like insurances go up, the cost of being in business goes up. Have you I know post COVID was super hot and the market was hot and everyone could start increasing their rates and they were busy. But as things now settle down and the stock market's taking a huge dump, so people don't have as much equity in investments, they're kind of tied into their houses and their mortgages, or if they're buying a new house, they're over investing. Like, people aren't willing to pay more for the work. And I feel like you would have a harder time right now just saying, I'm going to raise my prices or I'm going to increase my margins, because it's becoming overly competitive.
Yeah.
So what are the options? Like, you put more work in place, hire people who are able to perform the work at a lower cost and do more of that work to offset that. Like, what you can't just say, oh, I'm just going to raise my prices.
No, I think that comes back to, I mean, I feel like we're just dropping buzzwords here, but it's all of the systems and processes, right? I want to address something that you said. I do not think the answer is finding people that are willing to put the same work in place for cheaper. I think that is just, I think that's always been a huge issue. And it's, and I think that is taking advantage of a trade base or an individual that is willing to do it for little to no margin. And I've said it before, is like, that's fine while the market's great, but the moment the market's not great, that person doesn't survive. They don't have a nest, like, and sure, the argument can be like, well, shame on them for not charging me more. Like, if they don't want to charge me more, I'll do it. I'll hire them. That's, we have guys that are inexpensive, and we've had conversations with them. They're like, no, we're good. Like, I'm making the margins I want. Like, I'm just, all right. Then they have a system in place that they're hitting their margins and doing it inexpensively.
But
And
I that's all fine and good, but like when it gets to a point where you can't raise your prices more, you need to make more money to offset the cost of you being in business. Like my insurance right now for a van and a truck with me as being the only drivers is $10,000 a year. Just for a single van that's a 2015 and a truck that's a 2021. Like it was never, when I first went into business, it was like $3,000.
yeah,
It's getting incredibly expensive to be in business. So like, and you can't raise prices anymore. There's people out there who are hungry. I don't think the answer is to go do that, but it's inevitable for people to go, like unless you're just going to work for less money, you have to find ways to cut costs. You can shop around on insurances. You can try and squeeze every bit out of each client or possibly increase your margins a little at a time. But like what else? People could start slamming people with change orders. What else are you able to do in a hyper competitive industry other than try and reduce your costs in one way or another? Like, I don't think it's the answer, but I do think that that's probably what's going to happen here shortly, even more than it already has.
Well, I think so. We've been in that position, and frankly, there's some truth to what you're saying, that we're in that position now, where we're in a hyper competitive market because we're basically going after projects that, the quote unquote market thinks that we're not, prepped for. We haven't been around long enough, right? Like I've talked about before, I lose projects to guys that have been doing it for 40, 50 years, can't control that. I've been in business for the amount of years I've been in business, right? So we've done all that. We've looked at, all right, let's look at, we've looked at every single transaction that went in and out of the business and said, let's just get super lean and cut anything that we don't need. Let's just find a way to be super competitive on our overhead so we can shrink that overhead. And it's not like, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, we shaved 3%, big deal. Like it's not, it's like, well, okay, well, do we shave marketing? It's like, absolutely not. Like if we kill marketing, then the momentum's gone.
Yeah.
Like, so that doesn't go away. So for us, it really got to a point where we just kept looking at, all right, we're in a competitive market. How do we position ourselves to be different? And how do we get considered for these projects and ultimately win these projects? And that's where it's, we started building out, hey, what our client, I'm just going to dub it, our client experience would look like. That was all well and good. But what happened was that we were putting so much effort into that, where it's like, we have the whole client experience. We've got our communication down. We've got our document control down. Anyone that's working with us sees it, understands it, appreciates it, values it, everything. But we're also trying to get new clients to understand it. And that's a huge learning curve to teach someone really quickly. Like, here's the difference between that guy and us. And not every client values it. And what I realized is that the biggest mistake I was making is that I was trying to force that into clients that just would never value it.
Yeah.
So, we got to a point where we were taking on projects because we needed to take on projects in order to continue to keep the revenue where we needed to hit our gross profit, blah, 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 blah. Or so I thought. And that led to us really looking at, all right, why don't we project all this out? Why don't we sit here and understand, like, it's one thing to say we need to sell, we want to do $10 million this year. Okay, well, what is that based on? How many projects is that? What's the gross profit on those projects? What's your team look like? Does that mean you need to hire people? And if you hire people, are they fully burdened, or are they going to add to your overhead? Now you need to do $11 million. Like, where's the, how do you actually understand how to scale. And that's where it all came back to, like, first things first, we need to understand exactly where the business is today. We need to understand, what levers we pull and what happens when we do pull that lever. And, and most recently, we built out this kind of cash flow forecast of what our projects look like and where they trend, like where that project starts and finishes, and the projected amount of cash that we'll collect for that job. And you do that for all of the active projects, and then you look at it in a year, what your target is for the revenue in your quarter, in your month, and then you'll clearly see it's like, wow, that month is really light. And I know it sounds super elementary in some ways, but that, like, until you have that in front of you, looking at it every single day and understanding exactly like what cash is coming in versus the cash that you are required to spend, regardless of the project, like your true overhead, you can never actually know how to pivot. And you're going to get stuck in that position where it's like, I need to raise my prices because it's costing me more money, but clients won't pay me more money. It's like, well, to your point earlier, Tyler, like maybe you don't need to raise your prices. Maybe you just need to do another job.
Or honestly, maybe you need to do less
or
like
less.
that.
Reduce.
That's
Can I just make? Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you just for 1 second because I talked about this. I think I mentioned it in one of our emails recently, but someone drilled in my head years ago that if you ever reduce your company, like if you reduce the people in your business and you start scaling down, that you are doomed to go out of business.
if you
And
scale down.
yeah, and I don't know who it was, and I wish I did, because I would call them and curse them, because I heard that one time and it fucking
You're responsible for all of my.
it's like I can't fire them. If I reduce, I go out of business. But it has stuck in my head because you know we shrunk our revenue because we were in a position where we just weren't being profitable as we grew, and that's, I mean, what led us to restructuring our processes and ultimately scaling our business correctly. But yeah, like to your point, yeah, maybe you're taking on more work and doing more volume, or maybe you're reducing your team and doing less.
Well, what you were just describing about understanding how much work you need to put in place and why is amazing, but that constantly needs to be monitored. And from year to year, like what a lot of people don't understand is, okay, like this year we need to make more money, so we need to put $10 million into work in place where we are previously doing 8 million. You have to know what it costs you to put that additional amount of work in place.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even if you plan to put the same amount of work in place from like a labor perspective and a man hour perspective, from year to year, it's going to cost you considerably more, especially in today's day and age. Like, my insurances have gone up thousands and thousands of dollars. So if you're somebody who has a dozen employees, 2 dozen employees, and you want to put the same amount of work in place, like, you're going to make less money if you sell the same amount of man hours, if you don't account for what costs have changed from year to year. So, like, not only do you have to understand what's going into that, but you have to understand how that's changing. And there's times where it makes more sense to do less, and that you will actually make more money doing less work. And I think that I have the conversation with people all the time, because most people who resonate with me or want to hop on a consulting call with me or look for advice from me are people who are looking to have a more lean business style and approach. So I have this conversation with people all the time where, like, the answer isn't just doing more revenue or selling more, because a lot of times, again, without proper systems, without understanding the consequences of selling more work, you don't know if that's going to make you any more money. So, like, you're assuming all of this liability, all of this risk, and also just spending time chasing more work and selling more work when it's not actually beneficial to you and your business.
And I think, understanding understanding those numbers specifically, like if you do this, what does it do to my business? That was something I struggled with for a long time because truthfully, we had built this, we'll call it a financial dashboard for our business, and it was so complex. Like I was trying to understand everything, deposits, uh, line of credit, debt, income per month. It got to a point where like it got so complicated that I remember going in there one time and I had tried to update something and it was just like screwed, like way too much going on. And we, for years, like I remember, my previous CFO that I would work with couldn't get there. And Tim, who's with me now, as a controller, like have put this on him, and to date, now we have something. Now we can look at something and really understand. And it's simple. It's just understanding what happens when you add a project or you don't get a project, and gives everyone, include like Julian is head of operations, like he needs to understand, and now he does, like, okay, this is how much work I need to get in place per month. These are the projects that we have. In order for us to hit our target, I need to complete this much work. And and we've simplified it to a point where, we all look at it, we know what we have to plug in, and we understand what it does. And we are collectively moving that, moving towards that goal. And I'm sharing that forever. It felt so complicated, and I felt as though I just was never going to get there. So I just kept throwing shit at it and just grow, hire people, put them there. We have the work. It's like, sure, you have the work, but do you really need that person to actually do that work, or could you get by being a more lean operation, or would that award you to be more profitable as a business?
I speak with so many people and they're like, I'm at this point, right? I'm doing kitchens and bathrooms. We want to get into additions, and the goal is to start doing new construction and building homes. And I look back at my career and when I first started and why I wanted to do bigger jobs. And there was two reasons. One, I thought it was going to be more lucrative and more profitable. Like the bigger number just seemed as though I'd make more money. And I realized, not even quickly, but I realized that that wasn't always the case because I didn't have the experience to do that, and not from like a practicality perspective, but from a numbers perspective, and I didn't know how to operate a business on that scale. Um, and I also, like, from a job security, when you have employees, the bigger work keeps people busy for longer. So it seemed like there was less liability and less risk. And it kind of all culminated to this aha moment for me where I was like, I'm putting so much work into place. I'm constantly selling more each and every year. And my life is just getting more chaotic and I'm just spending more money. And my bottom line really isn't changing that much. Um, and I had the realization where it's like the market that I'm in makes it very difficult for what I'm trying to do with my business to perform at scale. And it if you want to make the margins that I want to make, so you're either forced to downsize or you're forced to scale to a point where you can lower essentially the unit cost of the work that you're putting in place, where it's like I can sell more and perform more work and it's costing me less. And I just wasn't really willing to do that because it wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted. But that led me like years of banging my head against the wall where everyone was getting paid and nothing was really changing on my end except for I was getting more stressed out. Led me to realize, like, really take a deep dive into my business, the numbers of my business, tracking my costs, tracking what I was making, tracking my time. And as soon as I did that, I was able to really determine a sweet spot as far as work goes, to make sure that I'm not putting too much work into place that it ends up costing me more money than it's worth. And
Yeah.
it's super simple with me. as you grow, you don't realize how chaotic it could get. And like, I think that most people grow because they need more money. And it's
Hmm.
like, you have to ask yourself why the money isn't enough at your current scale. Like, with the systems that you have in place and the amount of people that you have, it's not a profitable business model. Is there something wrong with your system? Is there something wrong with your business? Like, you need more money. It's not just that life got more expensive. Your business isn't making the margins that you need to. And I would suggest to people to understand that. And that's going to be the key to being able to grow in a sustainable way rather than just like, hey, we need more money. I'm going to add on more work, because if the work wasn't profitable the size that you are now, why do you think that adding
Right.
more to it is going to be more profitable? Like, it's going to be less profitable, if anything.
Yeah, going back to a comment earlier, I think it's the same idea that everyone thinks that home building and remodeling, it's all the same. Like, and it's not. And it's, our industry is so fragmented in so many ways, but it's also filled with guys that think that there's this, ultimate goal of like, hey, I have to build new construction. Like, that's when I quote unquote make it. Or like even my own thought process is like, I want to get to a point where we're just building $10 million plus projects, not because I think that they're going to be more profitable, though I hope they are. It's more because it's the product that I want to be building. It's the 45 white oaks. It's something where you go into it and you build completely uncompromised. But you know if that project doesn't, like, we sell it and it's not as profitable as I thought, and we go and do, or we go and build a custom one, and it's really difficult to get to that threshold, and we make a tiny gross profit on it, it's I have to have the realization or the understanding that, hey, like, this isn't a profitable business.
Yeah.
And I guess in one way it's like, am I okay with that, or do I have to pivot? It's like, do I have other things in my life that award me the opportunity to do something that is not as profitable as it could be, or as the business should be? And I think the other thing I pair this with is your team, or my team,
Yeah.
where there's on one hand, it's, I'm the owner. Everyone could just get up and leave, and through the years, plenty of people have. But while they're here, how much am I relying on them to ultimately make a collective decision?
It's also, is it fair to them, right? If you could be providing a better work environment, a better work experience, a more lucrative career path for them, how fair is it for you to continue to chase this dream that you have, and bring people into that system
Mm-hmm.
for a business model that is less than ideal?
Well, right. And I think I feel as though I've done a pretty good job about explaining where I want the business to go and where I want it to be, year after year. And I'll never forget this one kid. I had said in the meeting, it's like, hey, I really want us to be focusing on new construction. I want to move towards more modern projects. And I know that every year I kind of change what our goals are, but that's where my head's at today. And if anyone doesn't want to be part of that, feel free to grab me and we can chat. And one kid took me up on that. He's like, it's just not what I want to do. And I was like, hey, I appreciate that, and I'm happy to support you and be a reference. And he went on to do great things in a field that he was more attracted to. And it was only last year was the first time I started talking about it from a more business perspective of like, hey, this, just so you guys know, like, this is where we're at financially. Kind of showing them under the hood a little bit of like, hey, this is what I'm going through, and these are the risks I'm taking. But the reason I'm taking these risks is because I see this as a stepping stone to get to where we ultimately want to be. And I'm hoping that everyone here is, like-minded and wants that same goal. But again, like, if they're not, hey, that's fine. Like, I'm here to support people. Like, I want to be open and transparent with my goals, and I know everyone has individual goals, and if they're not aligned, that's okay. And I think for a lot of years, I made decisions based on what I thought they wanted. And that I think was something that I struggled with, and frankly I had to, get to a point where it's like, listen, like, I respect them, but at the end of the day, this is my business. And if I'm trying to accomplish something and I'm taking, I'm scared that if I go after what I want because it's going to impact, an employee, then, you know, that it's a wrong way to look at it, and I'm going to be in a position where I'm not doing what I want to be doing for someone that very well might get up and leave.
So you mentioned that you gave your employees a peek under the hood at what's going on with you financially, and it got me thinking quickly where struggles I've had with employees and capturing the cost of employees, understanding what those employees cost me, and then understanding, like, as an owner wearing a tool belt, what I can max out with what I'm charging, and when I have employees on the job with me, because I'm gonna max out at what I can charge, like, just from a day rate perspective. But I always, like, my employees were never privy to what I was charging for them. And I wonder if I would have, like, if there's a way to have that conversation with them in our industry, or how much we should open the hood to show them what we're charging for them, and what we're actually making on them, and what type of productivity we need. And what I think, like, if it, right, say you're paying somebody $25 an hour and you have to charge 2x, so it's $50 an hour just to break even with them, and then you want to make a profit on them, whatever your profit's going to be on them. So say you're charging $60 an hour and you're making $10 an hour on that employee after you cover all of your costs, and they just see that number and they're like, Nick's charging $60 an hour for us and he's only paying us $25 an hour, and they don't understand that you're actually only making $10 an hour. And there's a lot of risk associated with having those people on, lining up the work, structuring the business, just the anxiety of creating and building a business to support those employees. Like, how much should they know about that? How do we have that conversation? Should we just be fully transparent with them? Because
I
for
don't know
me,
if
like,
good.
I look at it, like, even from what my wife does for work and what her salary is, and I don't know, like, if there's a way to equate that the same way that you can in our industry, where, like, my wife makes a salary, but what they sell from a business perspective and the numbers that she's seeing in the financials, it's like hundreds of millions of dollars, that it's not like, oh, well, they're paying me X amount and then they're making this amount. It's not like, it doesn't translate. There's not really a direct correlation or parallel to my wife's salary to what their business earnings are or what they're charging for her. It's not as transparent
I,
as with our industry, where, like, it's a direct unit cost that you're charging for an employee, and they can see that.
yeah, but I would argue that your wife's company does have that data where it's
Oh, they
like,
do, but they're not privy to it, and there's no way
no,
really of them. Like, you can't just look up what's market rate of, like, furniture, whatever, what my wife does, like, as far as
right,
construction.
but I bet, like, it's, she goes away and they have some sort of like multiplier where it's like, all right, we lose her and we're gonna lose, 1% revenue, or whatever the case is, like, because she's responsible for getting that product from point A to point B, and if that goes away, then we can't get it from A to B, or whatever the case is. To your original question is like, how much. I don't know if it's necessarily important. I think it really depends on the way your team is structured, and the culture within the business, because there's certainly people, regardless of how much you show them, they're not going to necessarily understand it, and you're also going to get the people that don't agree with what you spend money on. And I am careful with how much we share. It's like, to reference a car, it's like, sure, I'll pop the hood, take a look. Like, you don't necessarily know what's going on, but like, you see that there's shit going on. You don't necessarily know, what size the engine is, or, how much fuel it takes. Like it, that those are the things that I think upper leadership I found it's been really important to be transparent there, where it's like, hey, this is what it takes to run the business. Here's what I'm spending on marketing. Here's what we're spending on rent. Here's the investments that we've made outside of the business. Like, because, and get them to buy into it. I've had pushback, and, hey, are you sure that there's an ROI here? And I'm more of a feel type of guy, where it's like, hey, I think we should spend more here because I think this will pay off. And so that doesn't always, like, that conversation doesn't always go, quote unquote, well, in the sense of, like, I don't have a ton of weight to shove around saying, hey, this is the ROI on that. And that, I think, going back to marketing and social media, like, that's a hard one to measure. Though, side note, like, we've actually found a pretty good way to measure that over the last couple months, and we've seen, we've actually been able to look and say, wow, that money in has, kind of turned around and given us this money out. My point is, the guys in the field that are being billed out at $75 an hour, that get paid $35, $40 an hour, I'd be happy to sit down and walk through, hey, here's how this rate is calculated, and here's the profit that we're making for every hour. At the end of the day, I don't, I'd rather them be in a position where it's like they just understand that they're in a role that is supportive, and they have the tools and the means necessary to be, successful at their career. But most importantly, that they have kind of the autonomy to grow in the business. And, and that, I've talked about it before, and I'm going to mention it now. And I know you guys are going to email me for this, so I'm going to have to get this document cleaned up to share with you. But about a year ago, I put together that career path document, and I shared it with you, Tyler. And it's like, took me 2 days to draft up. And it was like, hey, you start out as an apprentice. Here's what you're responsible for. Here's what you're going to be paid. And if you can accomplish these X amount of things, you will be promoted to a carpenter. And it walks through, literally, like, you can follow a line from apprentice all the way to the director of operations, which, is not an open position in the company, but it walks you through how you grow within the business. And the first interview we had, where we shared that with a potential candidate, and every candidate since then has said the same thing. Like, wow, like, this is really, really helpful for me to understand that I have the opportunity to grow here. So it's completely unrelated to, like, showing the behind the or underneath the hood of, like, what goes into a labor rate. But what it's doing is it's giving them the autonomy to make as much money as they want, or take the whatever career path that they want.
If you're creating this structure for them to be able to grow and basically control their own destiny and, like, the trajectory of their career, how on your end are you ensuring that you have the business set up to support that growth from, like, a financial perspective? Because realistically, not everyone can come in as an entry level carpenter and then become, like, your job site superintendent or your project manager. Or are you willing to create whatever business is necessary to support that, like,
You're saying if someone
path
comes in as an apprentice and kicks ass and is ready to be a super?
Yeah, like, so you have this.
Well, if there's not a role for it, there's not we're not, like, if there's no role, there's no role.
But what I mean is, like, hey, we want to give you enough opportunity to grow. How are you ensuring that your business is able to support that growth for anyone that you're hiring? Or is, hey, I just want to give people a path if they want to grow, the opportunities there. For me, it's like, hey, okay, I want to give people a path to come in as an apprentice or an entry level carpenter, and then I want to give everyone the opportunity to move towards a site superintendent or a project manager. Like, would you be willing to scale the business to that size to be able to support?
How do I say this? This isn't about building a business to collect people and give them, and the sole reason being to put people in the roles that they want to be in. And I want to be careful in the way I say that. I'm not saying that I don't want to do that, but what I'm saying is I'm not building a business solely to do that.
Yeah.
And the business has to be, the my goal. Like the business owner, like my goal, and then the leadership team has to also feel as though they share that same goal. And the people that are within the business, the leadership, the employees, the guys in the field, everyone, hopefully is aligned with that. In terms of the individual growth of everyone, yes, the intent is for us to support that growth and allow them to grow and be more successful and financially rewarded, as long as the business allows it to happen.
Sure.
And, I think when you do take the other approach where it's like you're allowing the employees to essentially scale the business, I think when you prioritize that, you get into trouble because, what happens is then, well, my business is, my team is outpacing the workload. And then you get into a point where it's like now you're taking on work, as they say, to feed the machine.
Yeah.
And, I think I think your question is the extreme example because I do think that naturally, as your team grows and becomes, better at their job, I think there's this natural, again, scaling of the business of, whether it's the complexity of projects, whether it's the amount, the quantity of projects, or just simply, how much work you're doing internally. Something is changing, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the business is necessarily growing from a numbers perspective.
Yeah, and I also think if you look at other businesses and what that ladder looks like, not everyone who comes in wants that. And not everyone who comes in wants to go from the bottom rung to the top rung. But I
Right.
think even if somebody wants to come in and wants to go to the third rung and that's all they want and that's all they need, at least it maps that out for them so they understand what needs to happen to get from rung 1 to rung 3 and what that path may look like rather than just wondering or questioning. And I think that helps structure your business as well as give your employees some sort of idea as to what they can expect with that growth.
Ultimately, it's about providing the map, right? Like the cash. It's like give me the data so I know that month after month, quarter after quarter, like I'm trending down the path that I want to be. Like if you want to do X amount of millions per year and at a hopefully it's not a revenue number, revenue is vanity, but it's like let's back up. Hey, I want to produce 20% net profit every year. It's like, all right, back into that. Like how much revenue do you think you need to do that? And then figure out per job, per quarter, per month. And when you map that out, you have a clear path to get there. Same thing with an employee. It's like, hey, you're going to come in as an apprentice. Here are the things that you're going to do, because we've hired carpenters and they come in, they're like, oh, I'm a lead carpenter. It's like, okay, well, before we, classify you as a lead carpenter, take a look at what we define a lead carpenter as. Because I can tell you right now, every company is names, their carpenters, lead carpenters, and they're not like, we've hired some guys that have had quote unquote lead carpenter status, and they come in and they've never trimmed a house before, or they've never framed before, or they've never done a lumber takeoff. And it's like, well, that's a whole separate issue in this industry of the I don't know if the term is correct, but like the nomenclature behind roles. But for us, that's why we have it written out is read through this and you tell me what you think you are, because that's what a lead carpenter is to us. If you're more of a carpenter, that's fine. We'll hire you as a carpenter, and then you'll understand how you get to lead carpenter status.
I think that we're getting to a point in the industry and the economy that we are all questioning the way that we're operating our businesses.
Oh yeah.
Just, everything that's going on with the financial market, with the housing market, with the cost of living, and it's continuing I think, to become more complicated. And I look back at the past 5 years from COVID on, where everything was hot, and there wasn't a reason for so many people, there wasn't a reason for many of us to look into our business and our model and our numbers and how much easier this transition would be, or how much more clarity we would have if over the past 5 years we were just constantly maintaining our businesses and checking in on the pulse of what was going on, rather than what it seems to be right now, where everyone's in a bit of a panic because it feels as though things are dropping off so considerably so quickly. And we often don't find flaws within ourselves or within our business when things are great. We don't question anything. It's not until there's an issue or the phone rings a little bit less that we start questioning what's going on, and how important it
Right.
is to just constantly be monitoring things rather than trying to put out fires
Mm-hmm.
once they exist. Where it's like, hey, if you could have taken small bites of this over the past 5 years, it would be far less painful than just really the ups and downs and surges of our industry, where it's like, just look for a little bit more consistency rather than, hey, things are great, I'm going to ride this out, and then things are bad, I'm going to have to hunker down and tighten everything up.
I think it's what I appreciate so much about when it's difficult is that when it is hard, it forces you to fix things. It's like your back's against the wall and you need to fix something because you don't have an option. And I've had this exact thought recently where it's like, am I getting to a point where I'm so comfortable having my back against the wall that I'm always going to have my back against the wall?
It is. I think that the problem is, I think that a lot of the way that we operate as business owners and in life in general is we're focused on the results
Mm-hmm.
rather than the process. And I think being so result driven and understanding bottom line, and I mean, even just from a lifestyle perspective, right? What place did you take in the competition?
Mm-hmm.
How do you fit in your social network? Like, we're so focused on the result and not the process and not the day to day, that I think that's that's really the result that we get, where we're only addressing things when they take a turn for the worst. And I think that if we were just to focus on the day to day and focus on operation and training and making sure that we are in the best place as we can be as business owners, um, in our relationships, in our life, in whatever extracurriculars we have, I think that it would be a little bit different. But I do think that we're so driven by results, that it often positions us like the case that you're in, where it's like, when I face that adversity, when my back's against the wall, then I'll put a proper plan in place to fix things. But until then, I'm just going to ride this out and everything's good. When I think that when things are great, it gives you an even better opportunity to address and refine your business to make it as great as it can be, because you're not up against the wall.
Yeah. I mean, it's for it's so common for me. I feel like I mean, not even in business. I feel like everything. Thinking back to school, right? Like thinking about that. I always worked far better under pressure, and it wasn't until like I said earlier, until I started really involving more of my team and leaning on us, kind of moving together, that I started realizing the power of being in a better position. That sounds so foolish because it's like, why wouldn't you want to be in a better position, Nick? Of course, like it's not it's not about being in a bad position. It's just that for me, that's how I operate. It's like when there's pressure, I'm going to operate to my highest peak efficiency. But when there's other people involved and not everyone operates that way, you really start kind of spreading that weight out and finding the momentum, and to look, at the last 2 years specifically. It's like the momentum that we've built and the progress that we have made has been really foundational for what the business will be in a year from now. And we, as like anyone, like we don't oftentimes reflect back and look at what we've done and how it's really set that foundation. But when we stop and think about what we were doing 24, 18, even 12 months ago, how different it was, and what those decisions then have led to today, and just seeing that consistent progress, um, you know kind of forces me to find other things that paint me in a corner, and tackle those as more of individual tasks rather than these monstrosity, or monster tasks of, like, the entire business. It's like, no, we're moving forward. Let's now hyper focus on this one thing here and find momentum there while the team continues to move the big picture forward.
I also think like there are a lot of people who don't work well under pressure, and I could even like look at my kids. Like it's a shame that wanting to work under pressure isn't necessarily related to the preparation, but more so in the event itself, where I feel that, like you said, throughout school, throughout my career, I do I perform well under adversity and under pressure, but it's typically as the event is happening and not the preparation for the event, where I would be far better suited as if that anxiety and that stress that feeds me and really I thrive under was more so during the preparation stages of what's going on rather than like when the event is actually happening, because it always seems that even if it was a test, right, it's like I'm going to stay up the entire night before and just cram all of this in, and like that's the stress and the pressure that really I thrive under and I do well with. But why couldn't I really shape that and use that more so in the preparation of that rather than
Mm-hmm.
like when it's actually happening? It's like closing out jobs, right? Where you're a maniac closing out the job, and it's like, well, why didn't I have this intensity throughout the
Right.
entire first part of the job? And just like for the preparation of this job and lining everything up, it always seems as though like we're addicted to that absolute chaos and trying to work our way out of that. Like my wife, she handles pressure, but like if she had the choice, or Selby, like it would be preparing beforehand and then not having a mad dash. And like I say that I hate the mad dash of things, but it seems as though a lot of times that's what drives me. Like it's a love hate
Oh
thing.
yeah.
Like I say I hate it and I hate the stress of work and I
It's
hate
it.
the stress of business, but at the same time, like I kind of need that.
Right.
It's like
Yeah,
an
it's not that you hate it,
absolute
it's that
love
you hate.
hate.
Yeah, you hate the feeling of potential failure.
Yeah, I
And
hate
then when
being
you
stressed out, but then everything I
yeah.
do in my life is like intentionally putting more stress on myself.
Right.
Like, how much do you really hate it?
Not enough, apparently.
Yeah. I think that a lot of business owners are that. I think it's just a personality type. Like you said, I think that a lot of us are addicted to the chaos and
Mm.
the stress and the anxiety. And that was something that, like I said, I hated, but I know we taught, or I just recorded a podcast on really having hobbies and finding a flow. And for a long time, that flow for me was work and just go, 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 and being
Mhm.
completely immersed in it and thriving on the chaos of business. And it wound up just not being super healthy for me. I think that there's better ways of, I guess, channeling that energy or fulfilling that need for some chaos in my life. And finding that flow. It doesn't have to be like closing a job out while you don't have enough money on it and there's not enough labor to finish it, and it's just on you. Which that was what I relied on for a long time. to like fulfill those emotional needs for myself.
Yeah, but like like we said earlier, until you really sit down and understand what that takes, you'll never do it.
Yeah. In hindsight, it's like there's a lot more clarity there, but I can like absolutely still relate to those jobs and those
Hmm.
feeling, and like I can place myself in every one of those jobs and
Oh
every
yeah,
one of those situations, and I like absolutely hated it as much as I loved it at the
right.
same time. And I can put myself there years later, and I'm probably looking at it in a bit of a healthier light right now, where I'm like, it wasn't that bad, but it was chaos in the like while it was happening.
Oh yeah, I mean, I posted something like last year, and I remember I related running to difficulties in business where when you're out for the run, or at least for me, like I hate it. Like I don't want to be there. I just want to be home. And then the moment you stop running, it's oh, I could keep doing that. It's like that wasn't that bad. It's like 3 minutes ago you were in
Dying.
pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean,
Anything to make it
yeah,
stop.
right. And then it's like when you hit that accomplishment and realize, oh, I did it. That wasn't so bad. You become like, completely numb to the fact that it sucked.
I wonder if I guess everyone doesn't push themselves that far. I think that
No, I
maybe
think
it's like
that's
type A.
I don't even, I don't consider myself to be type A. I don't know. I guess I'd have to look up what type A. I've always considered myself like to be the opposite of type A. No, I don't think that's a longer conversation. I find it very weird just in like human nature, how there's so many people that just are completely fine not doing or accomplishing things. Like I find it wasteful, I guess would be
Yeah.
it's like you're on this planet, you have all these opportunities and like you're here for, uh for all intents and purposes a pretty short amount of time. Like whether that's 70 years, like 70 years or more or less, like it's still a short amount of time, considering all things, and you're choosing to live this life of nothing. And that I find weird.
Yeah, and I don't even think like it doesn't have to be that much. Like you don't have to cure cancer.
No.
You don't have to like make millions and millions and millions of dollars. I think it's just fulfilling your life, and having substance to it. I just was thinking about this with my dad. He's now 70. He'll be 72 this year in December. And he worked like a dog his entire life, not in what I would consider to be like the smartest way. It was more I'm gonna really, I feel like it was more of a bulldog mentality, or I'm just gonna will it into place and I'll outwork everyone. And I didn't like it didn't seem growing up that it was the best mentality to have, but I see him now at 71, 72, and around other people his age, and he's in far better shape. He has way more energy. Like he's still living that lifestyle, and obviously it's toned down a bit. He's not 40 anymore, but he's still going out. Like, and I look at the juxtaposition between him and my mom always seemed to be in like better shape physically,
Hmm.
just from like she ate well, she handled her stress well, and I don't think that my dad did that. But I look at the two of them now, and my mom doesn't do all that much. Like she has a pretty
Yeah.
peaceful lifestyle. She doesn't travel, like she doesn't do anything crazy. And my dad goes from like, I'm in Belize, then I'm going diving in Mexico, and then I'm going to Japan to go skiing, and then I'm out west going skiing, and he's like just absolutely nonstop right now. And I'm like, wow, him working so hard and having that mentality and creating that lifestyle and those habits over the past, 40, 50 years are actually suiting him very well right now, because as most people are becoming less active and less engaged with life, he's now 70, like living his life like he never has.
Yeah.
it's insane to see. And like, I mean, I've had him over at my property, so I'm helping clean up, and I swear he like outworks me. I'm like, dude, you need to slow down some. Like, I call him,
Dude, that would like, oh man, I'd kill myself. Like I'd be like, all right, like no one's working harder than me. Like it would
dude.
drive me bananas if my dad was, out working me on anything.
It's insane, and like, he's like a beast with stuff like that.
Mm.
He eats whatever he wants, like stays relatively fit because he's always working. I call him the raccoon because like I just feel like he's never gonna die. He could go eat like leftover food out of the garbage can and then just survive. He reminds
Still
me of
be shredded.
he's like a raccoon.
I love
um,
that.
yeah, but it's funny how the lifestyles change and how a mentality or habits that you've developed at an earlier point in your life do carry over to later on in life, and how that's affecting him now. And what I saw is a bit of intensity that didn't really fit him in the lifestyle when I was growing up. It was just a bit too intense. As it's toned down a little bit as he's older, it's suiting him very well.
Mm.
Comparatively speaking to other people his age, like a lot of my friends' family, they're fine going down the shore or taking their vacations and just not doing much with life right now. And he's out there like getting after it. It's
Love that.
insane. I don't know how he's not like more exhausted than he is, but maybe that's just the stage of life that we're in because I feel like I'm always tired right now.
Well, I doubt your dad filled it out, but Tyler, you and I put together a business vision and scaling plan worksheet, and I think after today's conversation, I want to give this to anyone that's listening, and I think the easiest way to do that is on Instagram. If they go comment under the post for this episode, um, you know, scaling worksheet, we'll just make it simple, and we'll send you the spreadsheet, or not spreadsheet, worksheet. We shared it with a bunch of you guys already, and it's part of something bigger that we're working on. But what it does is kind of what we chatted about today. It really helps you look at what success looks like for you and for your company, and really questions the things that you need to question in terms of how you scale, what your true vision is. And like Tyler said earlier, like that might be doing less work, or it could be doing more work, or it could be doing different work. But I think until you answer some of these questions, it's going to be really difficult to actually set a path forward for the next 1, 3, or even 5 years.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we end up putting the cart before the horse, in life and in business. And I think sometimes you need to step back, take a breather, create a plan, understand the motives behind what you're doing, and then start driving forward rather than just like holding down on the gas pedal and then looking up trying to figure out where you're going.
Yeah. So if you guys want that, head over to our Instagram, comment under one of the reels for this episode, scaling worksheet, or you can do one better, and make sure you're signed up for our newsletter, moderncraftsman.co. Sign up for the newsletter. We just need your name and email, and you will get some behind the scenes content, not only just for these episodes, but I've been doing this Monday. I don't know what I'm going to call it, Tyler, but it's like a Monday brain dump. But it's just kind of what's on my mind, more transparent stuff I don't feel comfortable sharing on social media, but doing so in an email format. But this is where we're going to give you guys a lot more content and more value. Is going to be in the emails. So make sure you do sign up for that newsletter. And if you can do one favor, because I know a lot of you guys already are signed up, please forward the email to someone that should be reading these. You guys have been amazing replying to them and engaging with us, but it would mean the world to both of us if you could forward this to someone that you think would benefit from it. Because the more people that we reach, the bigger the impact we can make on this industry. And the more willing I'll be, to sharing more of my struggles.
It's neat. I think I've done the midweek thing for a really long time and remained pretty consistent with that. And I think that you over the years have just found it more difficult, like what platform to maintain that consistency on. And, over the past 6-8 weeks, to see every Monday an email coming out that's like not super long, but very powerful, very insightful, distilled down to just like what I feel is very powerful information. I feel like you've found your rhythm and like the platform that works for you. And it's been sick to see all the response that we've been getting, and how it's been speaking to everyone. It's been neat. And I think that, you've definitely found your flow there.
I appreciate that. Yeah, there's been one or two I've written. I'm like, am I sure I want to share all this? And then I see the number go out and it's gone. It's in the Ethernet, and I await the retaliation.
Yeah, it's been good, and there's a lot of vulnerability there, and it's not anything that you're going to find outside of that email list. So if you want to see it, check it out. Sign up for the newsletter.
See you guys next week.
Trust my mama, you're no match for my bad karma.